Welcome to Tied Down TV, the punk rock opinion show with me, Danny.
And Geoff.
Before we get started today, obviously we've had a great loss this week in the punk world. Mr. Rick Butler from the legendary band The Jam.
Yeah.
Fan of The Jam?
Fucking amazing, yeah.
Brilliant. One of the best British rock bands ever, I'd say, without doubt. I knew you were a fan of The Jam.
I know you did.
Just a quick, just obviously, I think, just talking about, just want to touch on it a little bit. I think The Jam are one of those bands that, you know, if you're the drummer of a three-piece of one of the greatest British rock bands, you're a big deal yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've actually got a Rick Buckler story as well, which I wanted to say for today. Is about 10 years ago, I was in HMV. I arrived quite late in the day. It was about 5:30, not long before they were closing, and there was a book signing going on. Not unusual to see a book signing going on in HMV. I've seen it happen many a times. A couple of times I've gone in, had a look who it is, and it's been someone like Michael Ball or someone, and I've just walked past. However, this one particular day I walked in and I thought I recognised him, and when I went over, it was Rick Buckler. I couldn't believe it. And they were just getting ready to wrap up the book signing. I thought, I've got to get something signed. So I ran over, and they had In the City on the discount part for $2.99. I grabbed it, went over to the table, and they had two security guards either side of him. And as I went up to him, they went, "Anyone else?" I went over, and the security guy said, "Sorry, mate, it's only for people who are buying the book." But Rick Buckler stood up and said, "No, it's okay." I went over, and he took the CD off me, and he asked me my name. I said, "My name's Danny." He shook my hand, took the CD off me, and actually, there it is. And he actually wrote, "To Danny, Rick Buckler," and he shook my hand. And he said to me, "It's very nice to meet you."
That's cool.
The guy just oozed absolute class. It's only ever happened. I'm one of those people, I don't really like meeting people who
like your heroes.
Yeah, as too much, because I've made a few things that usually it goes wrong with me quite a lot.
You told those
but
stories
I've got to say, there's two people who I've met in my life who showed nothing, but they just oozed class. One was Brian Robson, Man United and England captain, who during after a game once did not get back on the coach until every kid had got an autograph. I just thought that was quality. Yeah. That was like 93 when he was still playing. I was a kid. And Rick Buckler, and yeah, he just absolutely oozed class. Yeah, he didn't have to do it. It was a book signing for his new book, and he signed my $2.99 CD.
That's cool.
So isn't that great?
That's very cool, man.
Yeah. So today we're finally covering a much maligned subgenre. We're gonna do somewhat of a retrospective look at 90s beatdown bands. 90s beatdown. Yeah, it is one of those problematic genres that maybe some people don't like, right? So, but you know what I'm gonna do today? I'm gonna stick up for it. I'm gonna try and make a case for it. So, 90s beatdown, Geoff, or beatdown in general. We know you're not a fan.
Not really.
No, that's fine. A lot of people I know aren't a fan. What is it you don't like about it?
Okay, so I got introduced to beatdown originally by you, probably when I was like 18, and we were started hanging out properly. We formed that band and all that, and you would, obviously that was just a lot of stuff you liked. You'd be lending me CDs. At the time, I can't even remember what bands it would have been. I thought it was okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I got a bit older, I just moved past it. You know what? I don't want to be
disparaging. You've never been a fan of the violence, have you, either?
I don't like crowd killing anyway.
Yeah.
And that's seems like a big part of that scene. But even that's not really the issue, because I've seen crowd killing at every kind of hardcore show.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
I don't know. I don't want to be disparaging. Don't want to be hating on some people's favourite kind of genre, but it always just felt a bit too postury and a bit too macho and a bit too manly, and I just didn't vibe with that at all. Okay. Never really connected with me.
Well, are you gonna so today my job is to try and maybe convince you from the OG period of beatdown, the 90s, that maybe it's got a little bit more artistic credibility than just that.
Yeah,
than just a match, okay?
Yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. So just to let everyone know now, this is going to be a 90s beatdown video, so that's what we're covering here. Okay. 90s beatdown. Obviously, in my opinion, in the later years, more modern, there's a big slam death metal influence. Not really. There's some bands that are okay. It's not really my thing. But just just to start off then, what would you say the beginnings of beatdown were, in your opinion, and what you know? What would you say the beginning bands are?
I don't know a massive amount of it.
That's fine.
Bulldoze, I feel, are probably quite pioneering of that, that type of stuff and that sound.
Yeah.
No, you're going to have to help me out.
Okay.
Because I don't know a whole lot about the history of it, as I say.
Okay, so in my opinion, beatdown had 2 developmental stages before it became beatdown. Okay. So in my opinion, Geoff, beatdown started, or the beginning of the beatdown story started in New York, in Yonkers, with the release of Breakdown's 87 demo.
Okay.
All right, that is my opinion of where that was probably the first.
Proto?
I don't hate that term, but I know what you mean. So yeah, Breakdown's 87 demo, you know, that was like, you know, it was a lot more muscular, I guess, sounding than anything else that had come out before that.
Okay.
Also around that time, you had bands like Killing Time.
Okay.
Who were also playing a similar style.
Yeah.
Previously called Raw Deal.
Yeah.
Right. Even early Sick of It All stuff at that time.
I suppose so.
Yeah. Outburst, I'd say, were pretty important back then. For, you know, the sound but to me, hardcore punk, this still had more in common with the punk side of hardcore
well,
punk.
I've heard a few of them at the very least. Definitely early Sick of It All.
Yeah.
Killing Time, the Breakdown demo.
Yeah.
And I guess I can see where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I've never really associated it with it though.
So I've always considered this more like a seed planting period, right?
Yeah.
Late 87 to like 89, okay? Then I think the next period of this the developmental stage was the very early 90s. You had bands like Confusion, right? This band here, in Rage, from Staten Island, who, time just seems to have forgot about them completely, but if you listen to them, this came out in 91, if you listen to them, you'd say proto beatdown. That's pretty much proto beatdown. So Enrage from Staten Island, even a band like Dark Side NYC, I'd say, and most importantly from this period, I would say the band Neglect. Right now, I think Neglect probably had, in my opinion, the biggest influence out of these 4 bands. But I think what these 4 bands offered over the first 4 bands I mentioned was they introduced a theme of darkness, a theme of suicide, alcoholism, drug abuse, inner demons, stuff like that, which laid the foundation for OG beatdown, in my opinion.
Okay.
Now, a lot of this stuff gets labelled tough guy hardcore, another label I do not like, but I think the tough guy thing is short-sighted, given what the lyrical themes are.
Yeah,
a lot of the bands.
I'd agree with that.
A lot of the bands that would come in especially the first wave of 90s beatdown.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, those bands we mentioned, late 80s, early 90s, and then Neglect come along. But some people do put Neglect in the category of a first wave beatdown. I always thought they were a little bit, like you say, proto, but you can't deny that they definitely laid the main foundation for what could maybe be considered one of the first the first beatdown release probably, which was the Remember Who's Strong 7-inch by Bulldoze, and then eventually releasing this in 1996, which this is actually Geoff's copy. So you have this, and you told me when you bought this, you felt you should have it. Why did you feel you should have this?
Well, because it's a pioneering band, pioneering record of a genre that I'm not a big fan of, but I am a bit of a collector.
Yeah.
And when things like that get repressed, I do think I must get a fucking copy of that.
Well, you admit that to even though for everything you've said there about beatdown hardcore, it's the things you don't like about it. Would you admit that for any hardcore fan, this is probably something they should all have in their collection?
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
Because of its influence?
Because of its influence, and because of the first 2 tracks on it.
Right, so are you a fan of this record, would you say?
The first 2 tracks, Hypocrite and, what's it called, the first one? The Truth.
Yeah.
Fucking amazing.
Right, so Bulldoze, obviously, probably the pioneering and first beatdown band, right? It's easy right now. I've got to talk about Mike Bulldoze, the guitarist. I'll talk about him a bit on the next pick. Also, because I think he needs a lot of credit for developing the sound of beatdown. That's slow. That's really slowing things down. Really putting a groove to it. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, and then Kev One's vocals. Now, I think a lot of these beatdown bands in the OG time, like I say, in the OG times, are almost doing their best Neglect impression. Right? It's all about, you know, it's very similar vocal style, also with the negative lyrics. Like I say, I don't believe there was that much macho posturing going on here as what people think. I think a lot of it was just almost exposing yourself, talking about inner demons, you know, all stuff like that.
Yeah, which is not macho posturing at all.
No, of course it's not. So that's my argument that I'm going to put to head. So I'm going through 10 records today that I think define 90s beatdown, and the first one is the final beatdown by Bulldoze. Obviously, how legendary is it when you look at the back, you look at the songs on it. There's so many songs here that are constantly covered by bands. You know, The Truth has been covered by so many bands. Nothing But a Beatdown has been covered. The song Remember Who's Strong has been covered. It's one of them rare records where it feels like every song's a single. Okay? Like, the one of them bands that, because the vocals are so clear and there's no stupid effects on them or anything like that, the vocals become ingrained in your head and you find yourself singing. I've played it in my bedroom and my dad's been humming it, do you know what I mean? And stuff kind of gets caught in your mind. I think that when you're talking about Bulldoze as a sub-pick, I would also like to talk about this band, Terror Zone, which also featured Kev One singing as well. And I think those two are kind of in tandem a little bit. This is the first pick of the 10 I'm doing, but I think as a sub-pick, I need to at least talk about Terror Zone. Self-realization, A True Lesson in Hardcore, just a small EP, but it's because it's obviously Bulldoze associated with Kev One singing. It's pretty close to it's pretty close to Bulldoze. It's pretty much the same thing. Two very pioneering records here. But my first choice of 10 records, I would say, is Bulldoze. My second is another Bulldoze associated band, and I've gone Bliss by Train of Thought. Also featuring Mike Bulldoze. Very similar sounding to Bulldoze to a point, but I'd say out of everything that's on here, it is probably the most musically ambitious. There's moments of, I don't want to say it, but there's almost of like moments of like new metal singing in it, which might have worked more at the time. I'm not quite so much into it anymore when I hear stuff like that. But at its core, it's an OG beatdown record. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, sorry, I've knocked all my pile over here. So, where are we? Right, so
you were on Train of Thought?
Yeah, I was on... So, Bulldoze, Train of Thought. Next record, I'm going to go to Baltimore. Next Step Up, Fall from Grace. You familiar with Next Step Up?
I am familiar enough that when I've listened to it this week on your recommendation.
Oh, yeah. What did you think?
So the intro to the first song starts with like a clean guitar-y.
Yeah.
Which I thought, that's fucking hell, this is cool.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the vocals.
Oh, well, it's funnily enough you should say that. J.R. Glass is actually one of my favourite beatdown band vocalists of all time.
Okay.
Now, this ain't my favourite record by them, to be fair. Intent to Kill, the first record, I think is better. However, that is a lot more Neglect soundy. This is more of a straight up beatdown record, for sure. Again, as you've just said about the first track, Fall from Grace is heavily covered by a lot of bands, as is Bringing Back the Glory, which is one of those beatdown classic songs. I think even some goth band, I've seem to remember some goth band covering Bringing Back the Glory, like Paradise Lost or one of them bands like covered it.
Death Doomy bands from the 90s.
Yeah, but J.R. Glass is, he was in like Wake Up Cold and stuff like that. But Baltimore's got a really good history of tough sounding bands. Even if you look at Stout and you look at bands like Trapped Under Ice came along later. But even going back to the 80s, you had a band like Gut Instinct, who I consider one of the greatest ever hardcore bands. I wouldn't call them a beatdown band,
no.
But you've heard me talk about them quite a bit. So Next Step Up, I'd say, is the third album for me to epitomise 90s beatdown.
Cool.
Next, we're going to go back to New York and we're going to go Burden of a Crumbling Society by Irate. Now, these actually played in Liverpool once. I don't know if you came.
I might have done, I can't remember.
There's footage of it on YouTube, and Blades of Unity supported. It was Crawley put it on, I believe. Now,
I think I was there, you know.
Yeah, you might have been there. Now, the thing about Irate is what we were just saying there about a slam and death metal influence creeping in later on. Maybe this might have been the earliest example of that.
Okay.
Again, at its core, it's a straight up beatdown hardcore record. However, there is a lot of like death metal-y moments in it. You know, just periods of little death metal guitar and stuff like that. But again, very straight up. Definitely the best record in my opinion they released. I've got a few of their records. I wasn't too fond of some of the stuff they did after, but for sure this one is a classic for sure. And these aren't all necessarily albums. EPs were the way to go, it seems, during this period of time. So we've got Bulldoze, we've got Train of Thought, next step up, Irate. Next we're going to go to New Jersey, and we're going to go... The next two bands are from New Jersey. Another EP, Club Lang, Varsity Violence. Didn't you tell me you listened to this week?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I've actually really enjoyed it. It was really good.
Yeah.
I think that might be one that I heard way back when, because you must have had that.
Yeah, I've had this for a long time. Yeah.
No, I liked it. I'll tell you what I will say, just on a side note quickly, what I did notice with a lot of beatdown bands, love a fucking sample, don't they?
Yeah.
Love a sample.
Especially this band, this is just full of Rocky 3 samples.
Obviously, but even a few of the others. Like...
Yeah. So obviously the title track, Varsity Violence, have been covered a lot. It's a brilliant song. Now this is just quite what I was saying there about bands have, you know, giving it more of a credibility for its in a demon kind of subject matter. No, if you just want to fight, listen to Club Lang, because this is. But you know what? A lot of these types of bands, I think, there's a bit of humour there as well.
Yeah, it's tongue in cheek.
Yeah, it's tongue in cheek. Of course it is. Yeah. Apart from a demo, I believe this was their only release. 5 tracks, absolutely fantastic. Good luck getting hold of it. Good luck getting hold of a lot of these records. It took me a lot of years to track a lot of these down. However, I have had this for a very long time.
That's not even on the streaming or anything.
No, very hard, but yeah, absolute classic from New Jersey.
I found that a few of the guitar licks in that quite thrashy.
Yeah.
And there was like some blast beat drumming.
Yeah.
I was quite into some of it, it was good.
Really good, yeah. We're going to stay in New Jersey for our next pick, and we're going to pick Defeat, Second to None. This took me a long time to get. I finally got hold of it about maybe 10 years ago, but it took me a long time to track down on Cartel Records, 1999, again from New Jersey. First became familiar with Second to None through 6 Foot Ditch, actually. Mm-hmm. On their second album, they covered Victimized, which again is a really classic beatdown track. Joe None, this is pre-Shattered Realm, much better than Shattered Realm in my opinion, much tougher than Shattered Realm, much more straight up, do you know what I mean, much more sincere, I'd say. I don't mind Shattered Realm, some people give them shit, I actually don't mind Shattered Realm, but this is an absolute classic all the way through, hard as nails. It's kind of mad when you see footage of them live. I think they were a 3-piece, maybe. Although you wouldn't think it looking at the back there because there's about 100 guys.
55 piece.
Yeah. But
it's interesting for a beatdown band.
Well, you see it's a guitar bassist, singing.
Yeah.
Which is not the usual lineup. Didn't Propane a little bit like that? I'm not sure. But yeah, this is an unbelievable record. Second to None, Defeat. So now I've got a few left here. So. Continuing with the ignorance, if you just want to fight, back to Queens, New York. 1 Second Thought, Self-Inflicted. Again, if you're talking about just raw toughness, I'd probably say this is the hardest record of the lot.
Well, I had to listen to that one, and I messaged you, and you said to me, I think it's one of the most ignorant and hardest sounding. It
is. The very first song, Bring It On. Well, that's all you need to know. And that sets the tone for the whole CD. Still got their early influences there from Neglect though, however, because I do believe it's got a cover of LSS on it by Neglect, even though it doesn't say it on here, it just says bonus track. From what I remember, it is a Neglect cover. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you're just talking about raw, ignorant, beatdown, tough as nails, take no prisoners, let's just fight music, along with Clubber Lang, One Second Thought, it's just up there with that kind of thing. Okay, so I feel that, in my opinion, Beatdown peaked in 1998. 98, 99, I felt like was the best years for Beatdown, and these next two records, I think, in my opinion, they're the two best Beatdown records ever. The first is 2x4's Ainst to Be Fucked With. Funnily enough, I've been after this for years, and then I end up getting 3 in 1 week. The first one was off Sybil, and it came up all smashed
broken,
up.
Yeah.
My missus got me one, and Tom O'Brien gave me one for free, so I ended up with quite a few of these. But you know what? It is one of those records that if I ever see it, I'll just buy it again. It's that good. Simon Kelly once said to me that 2x4 would be far more well known if they were from New York.
Okay.
Being from Connecticut, maybe it's this style.
Doesn't have a scene there that's like it does in New York. It'll have a scene there, but you know what I mean? Like, it's not as recognised.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it belongs in New York, but this is a absolute classic of the genre. This is a band who released a demo, and their demo is better than most bands' official releases. That's how good they are. There's not a dull moment on this. As soon as it starts, there's a certain tone of guitar and a certain tinny sound of the drums that makes 90s Beatdown what it is.
No, I can hear it in my head already.
You know what I mean, don't you? And I just think, this band and the next band really, really nailed that. But yeah, this and the next record, I believe, are top of the Beatdown mountain in my opinion. And the next one, and this again is Geoff's copy. We've got here Denied, Together as None. Have you listened to it yet?
Yeah, we waited so long to fucking get it.
Yeah, we ordered it about 7 months ago before it finally came. Now, I've said it before. To me, this and 2x4, I think, are the pinnacle of 90s Beatdown. I just think everything about this is right. The Greg's vocals are amazing. The lyrics are just personal and just really, like I say, that early. There's no macho posturing in this. No. It's real.
Okay.
It's as real as you're gonna get, right? It also has fast moments like old school hardcore should have,
definitely.
Which I think it's got a place in Beatdown hardcore. I like it when bands have that hardcore pace still, which they have. Melissa's guitar tone is amazing. The drumming sound is amazing. The bass is amazing. I've been after this album for so long. I've been after this album for 20 years.
It's on your Holy Grails list.
It was one of my Holy Grails, yeah, and I finally got it. Originally released on a mini CD, which it's meant to be filled with hate. Meant to be re-releasing that soon. But yeah, don't be put off though by the fact that it's not on its original format. Because did you think this sounded amazing? Because
it sounded really good.
Sounds really good, doesn't it?
I would like to add that out of all the stuff I've been listening to this last week or so, talking about the Beatdown, that is, for me, high and above all. So
you like it then?
The rest of it, I actually like it.
Yeah. The last band to make up a 10 records that define 90s Beatdown. I've got someone actually asked us about this when. What did we share? We just shared the Denied album.
That's
someone
right.
asked what our opinion was on it.
On No Retreat.
Rise of the Underdog, No Retreat. Probably my least favourite out of the 10 I've talked about today. I'd say I actually prefer the second album, but when you're talking about, I believe that came out like 2000 and odd. I'm not sure what year exactly, but this was 99, I think, or 98. No Retreat. BFL Crew, Crutch, Mushmouth, Box Cutter, Strength for a Reason, all them bands, all amazing, Out to Win. But if you're talking about just straight up Beatdown, this is the one you want to hear. It doesn't let up, it's just constant Beatdown all the way through, and you would hate it. Yeah, for sure.
I think the ones that I did like is because, like I said, Clubber Lang had a bit of thrashy and fast beats. The Denied does pick up, even the Bulldoze, some of their stuff gets quite pacey at times.
Yeah.
But it stays like sluggy, so everyone can do their karate chops and shit. That's not really for me. Yeah,
this is good, and when you listen to it, I just don't think it's there's nothing in it that's too memorable. You know what I mean? It kind of, for me, it gets a little bit monotonous after a while.
Which is kind of how I feel about a lot of that stuff.
Okay, but for me, it's still important in this particular era we're talking about. I think it's probably out of them groups I've just mentioned there. I could have put a Crutch record in there, but I just think this one, talking about straight up Beatdown. So that is the 10 records. Just not an honourable mention, of course, but I'd just like to mention that I don't believe the first wave ended there. I believe the first wave did step in slightly to the 80s with Billy Club Sandwiches, Superheroes at Leisure, Terror Avs, Crown Holders, Sworn Enemies, Negative Outlook, obviously in the UK as well. The LBU crew had been doing stuff in the 90s, but that was really starting to, take, form an army, so to speak. You have Knuckle Dust, 9 Bar, Prowler, 6 Foot Ditch, Special Move, all them bands. But yeah, now with all that bit of history there, do you feel like you've got any more interest in looking into it at all?
I will. A couple of the ones I've listened to, I will revisit. I already kind of like Bulldoze anyway. Yeah. Denied, I only because we got the album very recently. Yeah. I will revisit that. Yeah. I'll probably revisit that Club of Lang record. Yeah. Maybe one or two others.
I mean, I've tried to get this guy to give it a time of day before, but he's not. But I thought maybe after today, maybe you might.
Look, I'm open. Yeah. I'll say that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it for today.
Okay. Well, do your little drill. Like, subscribe, ring the bell if you want some notifications. Come and follow us on the socials, Instagram, Facebook. Give us some messages, likes, follows, all that stuff. We love it. We'll see you next week.